Hey, welcome back to the SNS College Football Podcast. This is the Week 6 episode. First of all, my apologies for last week's episode. I take blame for it. I think my computer's disk space was all filled up, and so we had a very nice episode recorded, and the file just didn't load up, so that's why you saw that shitty 15-minute segment last week where I recapped everything. But we should be back and better than ever this week, and if you haven't watched the pod before, we're essentially just going to recap, and by we, I mean Dave from Houston, Addison, and then myself, 3 of the 5 members of the SNS podcast. We're going to recap the Week 5 premier games that we took a look at last week, broke those down. We'll get into our Week 5 winners and losers, recap some bets that we made, winners and losers. Got a little conspiracy corner segment where we're going to talk about Rutgers coaching, led by Dave from Houston. Then we're going to get into our Week 6 preview. We are going to take a look at Iowa and Michigan, Auburn and Florida, and I believe we're going to talk a little bit about Michigan State and Ohio State. Is that right, guys?
Yeah, I'll talk about that game a little bit.
Okay. And then once we cover those 3 games, we're going to get into what I think we would all agree is the most important part of this pod, and that's going to be the betting angles. Our bets, our leans for Week 6. We already have a bunch of bets that are officially on the dock. So with tradition, as always, Addison, let's start with our Week 5 games, and we'll start out in the Pacific Northwest. We had USC up in Seattle playing Washington. Your thoughts on that game? Washington obviously came away as a double-digit victor. Was there anything from that game, if you were able to watch any of it, that made you think that Washington's got a shot at maybe running the table and taking a shot at the playoff? What do you think about that game?
I wouldn't say running the table. I think they're definitely a player still in the Pac-12. This game, I was a little surprised. I expected more passing. USC after what they looked like against Utah. Washington looked a little more ready, I'd say, than Utah did for the deep ball. Matt Fink got started quarterback for USC. He had 3 picks. He really didn't have a great game, unlike the week before. And the interceptions were critical too. They were. One of the picks, they were in the red zone, threw an interception, and then 2 plays later, Washington pops an 89-yard touchdown. So you get a 14-point swing there. I think the game was pretty much over at that point. It gave Washington a 3-touchdown lead. So USC had a chance there to get back into the game, and then that sequence of plays really just kind of ended their hopes. Jacob Eason kind of didn't have as great a game as I was expecting from him, but Washington was able to run the ball pretty effectively. So, I think the turnovers mostly are what made the difference. Washington played a cleaner game. Aside from that, I thought it was pretty even, but those are pretty much my thoughts on the game.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I think you were pretty spot on there. I felt like the game was actually pretty close, and then as you alluded to, why Washington was able to pull away in that game. Looking at their schedule, Dave, I'll ask you the same thing. So they've got, I would say their hardest games remaining are at home with Oregon and Utah, and I think there's a chance that they could pull it off. I don't think it's going to happen. Do you feel any differently than Addison and I as far as, what, kind of off the top of your head, maybe what kind of percentage, what percent chance would you give Washington of running the table?
Of running the table, I'd say around 60-70% of running the table, just because, like you said, their 2 biggest games they have left are at home. I think that they are the best coached team in the Pac-12. I think their defenses have not been great this year, but
right.
They're a little bit more explosive with Jacob Eason. So I just think that what they have is good enough to have a higher chance to run the table.
Do we think, Addison? I'll go back to you. Real quick because I think this this group, we've started to talk about maybe this is the beginning of the end for Clay Helton. We speculate there could already be maybe a deal in place with Urban Meyer, but USC, they've got a brutal schedule, and Fink did not look very good. I don't know Slovis's status moving forward. Addison, is Clay Helton, is he dead man walking right now?
Yeah, at some point this year, I think he's definitely going to be gone.
Yeah.
Just because, there's some losses in there. Like, they go to Notre Dame in, a few weeks?
Yeah, a couple weeks. They're at Notre Dame. They've got Arizona at home. Then they're at Colorado on a Friday night. Then they're home against Oregon. Yeah. Then they're at Arizona State, who's off a bye. Then they're at Cal. I see there's potentially 3 losses in the rest of their schedule if Fink is like the starter.
Yeah, I agree. I think there could easily be 3 losses there, and I think they're 1 loss away from Clay Helton being done. So
Yeah.
They're basically rooting for that at that point.
Oh, I would agree with that.
They want Clay. Like, the worst thing for USC fans would be that for them to win out and then somehow keep Clay Helton.
Right. Okay, yeah. So Washington took care of business. We think they have a shot at running the table. It doesn't necessarily mean we think they have a great shot at the playoff, but there's a lot of
Washington. I just want to see Easton play more consistently. Like, he had a great game against BYU last week. Not as good. So I want to see more consistent play from him.
Yeah,
defensively, I think they lost a bunch of guys in the secondary. They've alleviated a little bit of those concerns, I think, because they seem to be playing all right.
Yeah, I was surprised. Their as Tolman alluded to, their defense is not quite as good as it's been, which they weren't expecting it to be. They lost a lot of NFL talent, but I think I was looking at their defensive line metrics, and they're very low. Like, they're triple digits in most of the most important metrics, but their style of defense, the bend but don't break, they're still, I think, doing well enough. And as Tolman said, they're a little more explosive with Easton. I would like to see a little more consistency with him, but I think he's only going to improve as he gets more reps. And their offense has actually been pretty efficient. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, they've got good playmakers.
Yeah, so interesting team moving forward. But we'll move on to the second game that we previewed. That was Virginia at Notre Dame. Lot of havoc in this game by Notre Dame, I would say. Dave, I'll go to you first. Your thoughts on that game, and did it go the way you expected, or what were your thoughts about Notre Dame coming out of that game, and I guess Virginia as well?
Virginia scored first, and then Notre Dame took back the lead. It was back and forth. Notre Dame built a steady lead, helped by good field position and some pretty bad turnovers by Bryce Perkins. I thought that Virginia moved the ball a little bit better than I thought they would, but it was really the turnovers that killed them. Close game going into halftime, pretty evenly matched. And then in the second half, Notre Dame came out and they really started dominating, especially on their defensive line. They were constantly in the backfield, getting sacks on Bryce Perkins. And then really the big play that kind of sealed everything was a sack and a fumble recovery for a touchdown by Notre Dame. So Virginia's defense, I thought, held up okay. Notre Dame's offense was mediocre, but I thought Virginia's defense, they caused a lot of havoc, and they kept them in the game. But what really killed them was not the fact that they couldn't move the ball, but just some costly turnovers and really a disintegration on the offensive line in the second half.
Yeah, I was a little concerned about Virginia's offensive line coming into the year. I think we previewed that when we did do our ACC preview pod, and it kind of came to fruition. Notre Dame has a very good pass rush. They teed off on Bryce Perkins. I thought he flashed in moments. I felt like, I don't know, it's weird because his throwing motion makes me want to vomit, but he made some pretty good throws in some big spots in the first half. But eventually, as you alluded to, Dave, they just weren't able to protect him. There's just too much havoc, too many negative plays, too many turnovers. And I think that's what ultimately led to, their defeat. But Addison, similar question. Do you think do you have Notre Dame as like a top 10 team? Like, it's kind of similar to Washington. Like, do you think there's a chance they could run the table here?
Yeah, there's a chance. Now, Notre Dame, they definitely didn't play a complete game, but I would say if they play defense like they did in the second half of this game, then they can play with anyone. I mean, like, their defense just so Virginia's up by 3 at halftime, but in the second half, like, it seemed like first of all, Virginia couldn't run the ball, and then every time they dropped back to pass, it seemed like something bad happened for them. They're either getting sacked, having a forced fumble, throwing a pick. Notre Dame, the defense scored a touchdown, set up another touchdown. Like, they just, completely suffocated them in the second half. So if they can create that kind of havoc, then, yeah, I would put them up there. Of course, it's going to be hard to do that on a week-to-week basis, but, yeah, if their defense can do that, then it can, have them up there at least.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we still probably question, the fact that Notre Dame's run game is not as good as it usually is. I'm not sure I'm a believer in Ian Book being able to, I guess, I don't know, like, beat the elite teams that we're talking about, them having to beat if they were to, like, make a run and get to the playoff again. But I agree, Addison. I think if their defense can play like they did in the second half, they've got a real shot against anybody because they are going to create a lot of short fields and they're going to, get points off of turnovers, or their defense is going to score. So they're a pretty interesting team moving forward. But we'll move on to the last game. This one's not really that interesting.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Do we think Virginia's still going to win that division?
That's a good question. I'm going to go to their schedule here. Do you? I mean, that's...
Yeah, I do. I do. I think that division's pretty trash, so...
Yeah. I will say that...
I think kind of by default, they're pretty competitive.
I'll tell you what, I mean, they've got an interesting stretch here. They've got a bye week, and then they are at Miami on a Friday night. Duke home the following week, and then they've got back-to-back weeks of at Louisville, at North Carolina. Do I think they're the best team of that bunch? That's very possible. I'm not sure about Miami still, but I think they certainly have a shot. If I had to choose right now, I would say they are, because I think they can do enough offensively. The one thing that concerns me, I don't know, Addison, maybe you have different thoughts, but Miami, they create a shit ton of havoc on D. And if Virginia is going to look like they did against Notre Dame at all, and they lose that game, then all of a sudden they're possibly 2 games behind Miami as far as, if they tie them, then Miami gets, it's the tiebreaker or whatever. But I guess, if you had to choose right now, do you think Virginia wins that division?
I think Virginia's the best team. I think there's still a lot of uncertainty in the division just because no one just really played that great in the division so far. And with them going to Miami,
right,
that makes a big difference. Like, if it was at Virginia, then I'd be more, inclined to take Virginia as the favorite. But yeah, that makes it more interesting.
I'll definitely be curious in 2 weeks to see what that line opens at, because that's a huge problem for Virginia as far as, we saw what a team that can create havoc can do against them, and that's a serious problem.
The thing about that game is the flip side is also true. Virginia creating havoc for Miami as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so that game's gonna be a mess.
Lots of sacks in that one.
Yeah, holy shit. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So we'll move on to the last game. This one's not super interesting. It was supposed to be possibly interesting, but Ohio State went to Lincoln, Nebraska. Played, Nebraska obviously. This game, I think, ended up settling around a 17 or 17.5 point spread. I saw a lot of sharp money on Nebraska at 17.5. Obviously, Ohio State, look like they've looked the entire season. Addison, I'll start with you. I mean, I'm not going to ask you to really recap the game just because I think the casual fan knows what happened in this game. Maybe give me something that surprised you the most from this game.
It's hard to say. I wasn't that surprised by anything really, but just we threw out last week, which people didn't get to hear, but we said that Ohio State in the trenches would manhandle Nebraska pretty much, and that is what happened. I mean, I was surprised by like the level of domination, I guess, because I feel like that was the best we've seen our O-line play in like a really long time.
Yeah.
368 on the ground, and then pretty much everything we did worked. Like there wasn't really any slowing us down in the first half. Like a lot of our games this year, the second half we're just kind of cruising.
Yeah.
Just the thing that surprised me the most, I'd say, is that the defense just still continues to smother people, just like completely shut people down, especially in the first half of games.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that he was running for his life the whole night. I was a little surprised that when Martinez had time to throw, though, that he made some bad throws. We'll just call it as we see it. I don't think he.
Yeah, I think he had more interceptions than completions in the first half.
Yeah, he just did not play well.
He threw a pick to a laying down Jeffrey Okudah.
Well, so that's a good little segue. I was going to say that if Nebraska had any hope in that game, they had a little momentum on that drive. They were running a little old school like speed and triple option, and they were in a little tempo. They were finding success because I think OSU had not seen that on film. But that pick sealed the deal. I think as soon as I saw that, I thought the game's over because OSU's not going to be stopped. They're going to go down, break their back, break the will, any will that fan base or that team had. But Dave, any additional thoughts, like anything that surprised you besides what Addison and I saw?
Nothing surprised me. I thought it was going to be a pretty solid, easy win like that. I'll say one thing that I'm happy about is that it seems like this year that Ohio State is doing a good job of minimizing penalties. One of the most annoying things about this team the last few years has been like just false starts and holding penalties and pass interference and personal fouls, and just haven't seen a lot of that this year. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about OSU obviously a little bit more at the end of this pod. I'll say right now that I put out on Twitter, I do like a little power rating poll starting about week 5 or 6 each year, and this is the first time in 4 years that I felt very comfortable putting Ohio State number 1. And I think for like the casual person that would see that, they would say, well, this guy's a Buckeye fan. Obviously, he's going to say that. But Addison can tell our viewers that I'm probably annoyingly like, I think I could be viewed like Herbie a lot of the time where I might not give OSU enough credit.
Not that bad, though.
Not that bad, obviously. But I feel very confident that this is the best team in the country right now. I think a couple of the other teams have some clear issues or deficiencies. That's Alabama included. I can talk all day about their defensive line and their issues right now as far as and them running the ball as well. But we'll save that for another pod. I think OSU, if they continue to cover spreads like that and look like that, they're going to be. That's a team that nobody's going to want to play at the end of the year at any point, really. But we'll move on. We'll talk about them a little bit at the end here. But our Week 5 winners and losers, always one of my favorite segments. Dave, I'll start with you. If you want to go ahead and give your winners, and then we'll go in the circle like usual here.
Sure. So my player winner is going to be Bo Nix. Finally put up a pretty solid statistical game, especially in the passing game. And they pretty much destroyed Mississippi State. I thought team winner was UMass because I didn't think they would win a game this year, and they did. So good for them. That's the only time they'll ever be a winner on this podcast.
Yeah, probably.
And I like what Matt Rule's got going with the Baylor team this year. They were kind of controlling that game against Iowa State. Thought they were gonna maybe pull off the choke, but they stayed in it, and they ended up winning that game against Iowa State. They're looking pretty solid, top the Big 12 with Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's a good transition to me, actually. That was my coach winner of the week. I think that was a bigger win for them than what the casual fan would think. Baylor, with the whole mess with Art Briles, it was a little unknown, like what they would look like. You bring in a very solid coach, Matt Rule. He's got them playing tough. They did almost choke it away at the end, but they did get the W, and that's what matters at the end of the day. They've got, they got an interesting little stretch here, but I think that was a big game as far as teams, because I think this conference is going to be the kind of conference that kind of knocks each other off besides maybe Oklahoma. And so that's a big moment for Baylor as far as them being a contender to get to that title game and maybe have, a puncher's shot at winning that conference. But that was my coach, my winner as far as a coach for the week. I got a few players. I don't have like a program in particular. Sean Clifford for Penn State. They annihilated Maryland, and everybody leading up to that week was saying that their concerns with Penn State were really mainly like the defense wasn't playing as well as we thought they would. But if Penn State was going to go anywhere this year, they were going to need more from the quarterback position. And I know Maryland's not a great defense, but it was a big step in the right direction. He had a fantastic game, both throwing and running. So I'm going to give him a little shout out. Julian Okwara from Notre Dame, their defensive end, who was pretty quiet to begin this year, but he single-handedly wrecked that game against Virginia, 3 sacks. I think he had 2 forced fumbles perhaps, but he's playing up to his All-American status now. That was a big game for him. And then our guy, Jeff Okudah, the guy that we mentioned, the guy laying down, getting the pick, had a very nice pick possession before that. He is showing why I think a lot of people think he's going to be the first corner taken off the board next year in the NFL draft. So those are my winners. Addison, give your winners and then transition right into your losers.
Okay. First, I've got a few players and a fan. So last week I tried to give a fan winner, and then of course the pod was not uploaded. So I'll give the fan out again, and the fan is Nicole, who listens to the podcast every week. So good job, Nicole. Makes you a lot smarter, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Devontae Smith, Alabama receiver, had a huge game this week. Now let me pull up the numbers here. 11 receptions, 274 yards, 5 touchdowns.
Yeah,
so,
that's a lot.
Going into the year, Bama's got all their receivers, but Devontae Smith is probably like, the 3rd or 4th guy that you really think about in that receiving core, but he seems like he's been Tua's guy this year more than anyone else. So it's interesting. Like, they've got a ton of weapons, obviously, and he's one of them, and he's having a huge year. So he's one of my winners. I've also got Chuba Hubbard. He went for almost 300 yards against Kansas State.
Chuba.
Yeah, and he is leading the nation in rushing. So obviously very deserving of a shout out there. I feel like he's an underrated player too. People aren't talking about him too much. But he's on pace for a 2,000-yard season so far. And playing the Big 12, they might be better at defense this year, but we'll see how he continues to play in Big 12 play.
They're never better at defense. He'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, and then my last one is Kentucky running back Kavasier Smoke.
Wow.
He had 2 carries for 7 yards in a 24-7 loss. I just like his name.
I was going to say, what are we talking about? Okay, fair enough. That's a good winner.
All right. Those are my winners. I actually don't have that many losers this week.
Really?
Last week I had a ton, mostly Michigan.
Right.
But, Tennessee is a winner just because they had a bye week and they didn't lose.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
They
forgot
made
about
it.
them. Yeah, so the losers, first one is Maryland.
Yeah.
Unfortunately I had Maryland.
So did a lot of pros, yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't close.
Y'all should have known better. All that hype around the blackout and the canceled classes on Fridays was complete shit. That's terrible fans, terrible atmosphere. I don't even know what they were trying and why people bought into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you pretty much said it right there. And everything Maryland did, talk about getting overhyped for beating 2 shitty teams at the beginning of the year. They were just fool's gold. They were never good. So shame on all of us who ever thought that they were actually good.
Yeah.
And shame on Maryland.
Yeah.
Being so shitty.
Yeah.
And then next big loser this week, Justin Fuente.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech head coach. They lost to Duke 45-10 at home. Absolutely embarrassing. Just the state of this program right now. Our friend Corey, unfortunately, is going to have to start going on hikes on Saturdays or whenever they're playing to avoid watching the shit show that this team is right now. And the thing about Fuente is, it just seems like he is not inspiring any hope whatsoever. He's a very low energy guy, I would say. The team has regressed every year under him, and the recruiting has completely just disappeared. Like, they recruit literally 0-star players now. So it doesn't look like things are going to get any better. So the way things are going, Fuente is probably going to be gone after this year. At least if you're a Virginia Tech fan, you should hope so, because he has the program going just totally in the wrong direction.
Yeah, he's my main loser for this week, and I can't stress enough how terrible of a coach I think he is and how much he sucks at life. You nailed it, Addison. He's just low energy. I just don't feel like there's any excitement in that program. And like you said, they're recruiting at a historically low rate, or like clip, if you will, right now. It's bad. And if they want to right this ship, they need to cut their ties. And I know Corey from Denver, he talks about how cheap they are as far as they don't want, to have to pay his buyout or whatever, but he's got to go. There's no way this guy can stay with how this year is going to end up horribly for them. They are not going to make a bowl game. They are atrocious. He is a huge loser. My other loser for the week, it's unfortunate because UNC could have been a huge winner this week. I would have gave Mac Brown a shout out, and good for them for being in that game. I think it was the right decision to go for 2 at the end of that game. But the loser part of this, and I don't know who made the call. I don't know if it's the OC. I don't know if Mac Brown. I'm pretty sure it's whoever the play caller is for them. I should have looked this up before the pod, but calling like just straight speed option with Sam Howell against one of the fastest front sevens in the nation makes absolutely no sense to me. Like, when Mac immediately signaled for 2, I said, here we go. Like, UNC is going to win this football game. That's a huge win for them. It's going to send shock waves through the college football world. And then I saw that play run, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, who called that play? So, like, I couldn't believe it. Like, that, whoever the play caller for UNC is, big loser. That was a horrible play call.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Correct decision to go for it, but the play call was horrible. I think they ran it to the short side, too.
They did. Oh, they did. Yeah. As if it couldn't be any worse.
Low percentage play. When's the last time we saw the speed option work?
I don't know, like 98 maybe. It's been a while.
It's been a long time. I heard that Clemson has stopped 14 straight 2-point conversions, which, if true, that's a pretty crazy stat.
Oh, wow.
Too.
Yeah, that's because that's like a 50-50 play. That's crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay,
yeah. So Venables is a great coach.
He is. He's one of my favorite.
Situationally, like they're really solid.
Yeah, we just referred to like Justin Fuente being just a horrific football coach. Brent Venables is. I don't know if he's had head coaching offers. If he just gets, I know he gets paid a lot by Clemson, and maybe he likes his spot there. But he is a fantastic. He might be the best defensive coordinator in the country. He is an amazing coach. But Dave, you're losers, and then I'll let you transition into one of your best and one of your worst bets for Week 5.
Well, okay, so loser, Washington State played so bad that unfortunately the Pirate had to call out his team, and he called them fat, dumb, happy, and entitled. So that's it's a bit of a rough patch for Pirate and his team right now. I'm not quite sure how the direction of their season is going to go from here.
He needs to lock someone in a closet and get him fired.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe hangovers are the problem for that team.
Yeah. Right.
Especially after what happened last week and then the week before against UCLA. But my last loser this is an unfortunate loser, but it is Purdue's season.
Yeah.
they lost both Sindelar and Rondell Moore, and not quite sure how long all those guys are going to be out, but I think that kind of spells disaster for the rest of their season.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, that's a team that, they have a ton of injuries right now, and they cannot afford injuries at all because they don't have a lot of depth.
Yeah, Addison, I remember we talked about that quite a bit, and they're in deep shit. I mean, that's all we need to say about it. They very well. It's possible they could finish last in the West now. We thought Illinois was pegged for last, but
and Braum seems like he just knows that it's not going to be good the rest of the year. Like he's setting up that excuse. I mean, it's really hard for him to do much about it at this point. But yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be bad.
I think they know it's gonna be rough.
Yeah. All right. We'll. So those are our winners and losers. Great segment as always. We'll go quickly into our week 5 recap for our bets. Some winners, some loser bets. Dave, I'll start with you. If you just want to give like your best one or two, and then give me your worst one or two as always.
All right. So my best bet was Penn State just absolutely annihilated Maryland, and proved me right about their terrible atmosphere and Maryland being overhyped. So I was really happy about that. And then probably my worst bet was, Mississippi State got destroyed by Auburn. That was my best bet of the week last week, which went down in flames pretty early. Mississippi State, it just looks like they're really showing the effects of losing all those NFL guys on defense from their squad last year. So Mississippi State could have a rough time defensively going forward.
Yeah, I had that bet.
They were a little overhyped.
Yeah,
going into the year, I'd say.
Yeah, I think a lot of members of this pod, we had Mississippi State, and that we could just tell right away that was the wrong side. Auburn came out like a freight train and just annihilated them. So that was definitely one of my worst ones. I had UNLV +9 at Wyoming. They ended up losing by like 40. They lost Armani Rogers, their starting quarterback, and then their starting running back in the second quarter. It doesn't matter because they don't play defense. So that was pretty bad. A couple of my better ones. I had 2 best bets technically last week. I don't know what the fuck North Texas was doing, but Oregon State ended up roaring back to cover in that game. They should have won the game. They outplayed Stanford and really should have gotten the win straight up on the field. Minnesota had actually the most units on them, but ended up laying that bet after I made the best bets. And I know Tolman and I, we benefited from that pretty handsomely. But, a couple good ones in there. Addison, I see that you don't have any winners, so, can we make you a loser of the pod for the week? You only had 3 bets, but, I mean, technically that's a loser.
I only had 3 bets, but they were all losers, and 2 of them were extremely bad losers.
Okay. So, yeah.
Maryland and Mississippi State, so those weren't even close.
Right.
Virginia, I mean, if they could just have held onto the ball, they probably covered.
I think they cover if they hold onto the ball. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I told Steele this. I kind of said tongue in cheek that I felt like Virginia should have covered. You have to give Notre Dame credit for being able to create that kind of havoc, and that plays into the betting lines. And so, for me to just say Virginia should have covered, that's not correct. But I think you're right, Addison, in the sense that just don't give them the points. Don't gift them points, and you do cover. So, certainly, yeah.
I had leaned Indiana strong. I don't even know why I didn't pick them.
I was surprised you didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, because I talked about it, and I was distracted last week. I had things going on, but
life. Man.
Definitely should have bet Indiana.
Yeah.
I thought about Arizona State, and they ended up getting.
I did too. Yeah, I know Dave had them. That was a good one.
Missed some bets that I was leaning.
So on the flip,
I'm on a good streak. I probably will talk about it later, but I'm on a good streak of weird things, calling some weird things that have been happening in the Pac-12 lately.
Okay, yeah.
I had that one the week before. I had the Washington State, UCLA, just funky stuff going on out there.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems like that seems to always be the case every year in that conference, Pac-12 after dark. But Steele, on the flip side, of Addison being kind of a loser this week. Steele had a great week, went 10-4. I would say his best bet. He had Duke +3. We alluded to the fact that they blew out Virginia Tech, so that was a great win for him. His worst bet, I mean, he had Nebraska +17. That serves him right for betting against Ohio State every week. So, he had a great week. Corey, 6-7-1, not too bad. He had, let's see here. Yeah, he had Indiana. He had Washington -10 against USC. They cover. He did have Penn State. I guess that's technically his best bet. Worst bet, I mean, obviously he had Mississippi State, as I alluded to, that we pretty much almost all of us did, I think, besides Steele. But yeah, so not the greatest week, but not terrible. But we'll go ahead now and move on to our Conspiracy Corner segment. So, Tolman, have at it, man.
Thanks. So we've had our first coach firing of the year. Chris Ash from Rutgers has been let go after a pretty lifeless start. So we now might as well just start talking about who is the potential replacement for Chris Ash at a Rutgers program that really hasn't had a whole lot of life since Greg Schiano left. And the natural conspiracy, you could say, is that Greg Schiano would be coming back as the coach of Rutgers this year or next year. Schiano, there was rumored to be linked to the defensive staff with Bill Belichick at the Patriots, but announced that he would not be taking any position. He was going to stay home, spend time on his faith and family. So you could look at it as maybe he saw the writing on the wall with Chris Ash at Rutgers and just decided to hang out until he could come back as the beloved Rutgers coach that he once was. I don't see that happening. I don't think his decision to announce that he wasn't joining the staff had really anything to do with the Rutgers job or the faith and family. Maybe he just had kind of slipped down in the coaching ranks. He didn't have a great couple of years, last couple of years at Ohio State, so maybe he just wasn't good enough for Bill Belichick's coaching staff in New England. So then we can move down the list. That's at some other potential names that have been swirling. Al Golden, who is
a loser.
He's a loser, but he's linked to the job because of he knows the area. He's kind of a beloved Philly Jersey guy,
right.
But I don't think they go there. I think he's pretty lifeless. I agree. He's jumped to him being a loser. Butch Jones is out there. Butch Jones is currently an intern.
Jesus, this is awful.
He's an intern. He's an intern on the Alabama coaching staff. That's actually his title. Butch Jones is an option that's out there. He's one thing where Rutgers has struggles is just getting good recruits, and Butch Jones at the very least is a good recruiter. But the problem with that is Rutgers has had just issues with potential coaching abuse on players on both the football and basketball programs in the last decade. So you've got potential for that with Butch Jones there. Doesn't have a high reputation for his treatment of players. So I came up with some more realistic candidates. Joe Moorhead, he's an area guy. He's a Eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Philadelphia recruiting specialist, and that's the talent that you can maybe get at Rutgers. Also, things are kind of stagnant at Mississippi State since he started there. Jeff Monken at Army has been rumored to be moving up in the ranks, but I think he strikes me as kind of a disciplined guy and seems kind of happy with his gig at Army. So the most realistic candidate that I came up with is this kind of off the map and maybe unheard of, but Anthony Campanile, who is Michigan's co-defensive coordinator this year. He's 37 years old. He is a former Rutgers player and is just beloved in New Jersey. Michigan has actually done pretty well recruiting New Jersey since he's been on staff there. I say this because he's got an interesting buyout clause in his Michigan contract, and that is he has a buyout unless it's a position with Rutgers. So that seems odd to me that that's something that special's in there. Maybe Rutgers has been eyeing him for quite some time, and that's why that clause is in his contract. So the best one that I could come up with, once again, Anthony Campanile, co-defensive coordinator at Michigan, with that interesting buyout clause for Rutgers coaching staff.
Interesting, yeah. That's I mean they need some energy in that program. They should be able
How about Fat Brett? He's currently defensive line coach for the Patriots.
I can't believe that name was just brought up in this pod.
That would be disgraceful. I cannot imagine or take that. No.
I heard a rumor that there were rumors of people throwing out Matt Rule's name, but there's no way he would. That's moving down in job. Like if Matt Rule's going to that area, he's going to Penn State. And like Franklin's not leaving anytime soon, it seems.
Yeah,
so,
there's no way that happens.
Yeah, I mean the only
especially since Matt Rule is now getting Baylor back. Like when he took that job, that's the kind of job that you take like if you want to be there kind of long term, because it was in obviously terrible shape when he took it over.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, another interesting Conspiracy Corner segment. We'll move on now into our Week 6 preview. We're going to, like I said in the beginning of the pod, we're going to preview Iowa at Michigan, Auburn at Florida, and then Michigan State at Ohio State. So let's start with Iowa and Michigan, boys. And what I'm going to do this time is I think the last few pods I've been just asking for like a general outlook. We're going to try to organize this a little bit better. I'm going to kind of go like when Iowa has the ball and then when Michigan has the ball, that type of thing. So Addison, I'm going to start with you. What are you expecting out of Iowa's offense in this game? Like for the casual fan, if they turn on the TV, what would they expect to see with Iowa's offense against Michigan's defense?
Well, Iowa offensively, we talked about last year, running game not great. Beginning of this year, and especially against Iowa State, they didn't look great, but it does look improved so far, I'd say, over last year. I mean, a lot of those are against not great teams, so we'll see if it continues. But it's not an explosive running game. It's just kind of methodical. It's Iowa. They want to ball control. And then with quarterback play, Nate Stanley, he's played pretty well, I'd say. He hasn't thrown a pick yet, so they need that to continue. So yeah, it's not an explosive offense. They've been all right though, I'd say, so far this year.
Yeah, they so I was digging into these games before we got on here. Obviously, Iowa, a little surprising to me, 10th in adjusted line yards, 6th in the country on standard down. So they're doing what you said, Addison. They're ball controlling. They're staying ahead of the sticks. 1st in the country in havoc rate allowed. So as we said, not the greatest of competition so far, but their O-line is doing a lot better this year, I think, as far as they're not allowing a lot of negative plays. They're staying ahead of the sticks. They're not turning it over. They're setting themselves up for a lot of success. And it wasn't necessarily shocking to me, but this is crazy to me that we ever would have said that Don Brown's Michigan defense is only 124th in the country in havoc rate. I mean, they're rated down there with like OU and like New Mexico and teams like that. 60th in adjusted line yards. Now, they are 26th as far as success rate. Teams are not grading that well against them as far as play-to-play. 18th in adjusted passing down yards. So, I mean, they've still got some athletes on that defense. They're doing some good things. But I think Iowa's going to I think they're going to be able to actually get ahead of the sticks decently often. I don't think Michigan's going to really put them in a lot of 2nd and 3rd and long situations just because they can't create havoc like I alluded to. But Dave, do you have anything else to add as far as what do you expect to see when Iowa does have the ball?
I expect to see an edge in their line play, and I think that's going to allow them to control the ball and have a good chance to have sustainable drives and score some points.
Yeah, I mean I would tend to agree with that. So, Dave, I'll stick with you here. We'll flip it to where when Michigan has the ball. Clearly, I think we've alluded to this before. Everybody, even the casual fan, I think seems to know that Michigan is just struggling to find their way as far as an identity. They seemed pretty excited about smacking Rutgers around last weekend, but offensively, 67th in havoc rate allowed, 33rd in adjusted line yards, grading successful as far as they are 53rd in the country in that play to play. So I mean, it hasn't been horrendous, but it hasn't really been what everybody expected with Gaddis coming in and them spreading this ball around. Do you think we're going to see any improvement with them in this game as far as, they've got Iowa coming in. I'm going to get into their metrics in a minute. They aren't actually that great defensively. But Dave, do you think Michigan's going to find some success against Iowa offensively?
So even if they do, even if Iowa's defense isn't that great, Michigan has no chance for explosive plays in the run game. I don't see that as a threat. I think Michigan's chance to be successful offensively is, I believe also Iowa has a pretty low havoc rate.
They're 105th, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say somewhere in the triple digits.
Yeah.
So if Shea Patterson can have some time and connects on his throws, which he hasn't shown, maybe that's how they can move the ball and have some success.
Yeah, Iowa 105 in havoc rate, 88th in adjusted line yards, 79th in success rate. So they haven't been grading out too well on D this year, but I agree. I think if Michigan's going to have success, it feels like it's going to have to be Patterson being a little bit more consistent, finding those playmakers they have on the outside, which I think they might do in this game a little bit. But Addison, when Michigan's got the ball, are you expecting to see anything drastically different from what we've seen so far this year?
Well, it's been bad, but last week it seemed like Donovan Peoples-Jones might be getting healthy again. So if he's playing well, then that'll definitely be a boost to their offense. Obviously, Michigan's running game has been trash this year. They haven't been able to move anyone on the offensive line. The running backs haven't really done anything. It is surprising that Iowa hasn't created a lot of havoc this year, especially when you got a guy like Epinesa. I think he's only got one sack on the year. So that is concerning for Iowa's D, but the thing that they've done really well this year is getting off the field on third down. They're seventh in the nation in third down percentage. So if they can continue to stuff Michigan's run game, force them in third and longs, just if you're not going to create havoc, create negative plays, turnovers, that kind of thing, then you better make sure you're pretty damn efficient. And I think Iowa has been doing a pretty good job at that this year.
Okay. So this game is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, either of you. I think Michigan's -3.5 right now. Is that right?
That's what it is now.
Yeah.
I got they opened around -5.
And you took Iowa at 5, right?
I took Iowa getting 5.
Yeah.
Look, I see an edge with ball control, and still have some questions about Michigan turnovers.
Yeah, I think where you got it, there's definitely, my opinion is there's definitely a little bit of value there.
I'll make an even further statement about that. You could say potential Michigan home field advantage, but I'm just hearing rumors of quite a sense of entitlement from the players. Everything is nice there now. They're wearing fancy Jumpman brand stuff.
Right.
They just don't seem like a spirited Michigan to me right now.
Yeah. Addison, as far as I guess the current number, 3.5, which way would you lean there?
Well, everything I've seen this year makes me want to take Iowa. But for some reason, I'm just thinking that Michigan's backs are against the wall. This is a massive game for them. If they lose this, the season could get out of control, especially for Harbaugh. So, if they lose this, then, Harbaugh's really going to be feeling pressure.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of pressure on them to come out and play well in this game. So, I don't know. I feel like Michigan's going to win this game and cover, but I have nothing I've seen, on the field this year would indicate that that's going to happen. It's just totally gut feel. It's not something that I would bet.
Yeah.
But that's just what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I really do not have. I think where Dave got it is good.
Yeah, that's a lot better. I would definitely consider Iowa more at that.
Yeah, I think now, I'm indifferent to it. I can see why you would take Iowa. I think your reasons for why you would think Michigan would win and cover, I mean, that's totally legitimate. I think I mentioned this right before we fired this up, that I think the total is 48 right now. It might have moved a little bit, but I actually am leaning the over if I had any play in this game. I just think with both defenses not really being able to create a lot of havoc, I think both offenses are actually going to find a little bit more success than what the casual fan would think for a Big Ten game like this. I think this total gets into the 50s actually, and I'm going to say that I think Michigan's going to win this game, and there's nothing. It's the same with you, Addison. There's nothing that I've seen that makes me I don't know why. I just think it is one of those things where it's desperation. We're going to find out, I think, everything we want to know about Michigan at this point. But I could see it being a field goal game. So I guess I would lean Iowa, again, with taking the points there. But, Dave, before we move on to Auburn and Florida, is Iowa going to win this game on the field? Or do you think they just cover and Michigan wins a close one?
I think they cover and Michigan wins a close one.
Okay, so it seems like we all have Michigan on the field. I think we obviously, one of us, Dave, took Iowa getting the points. Otherwise, though, I think the over in this game might be worth looking at. But we'll move on to Auburn and Florida. This is a pretty, I guess, fired up game that we've been pretty spirited talking about because there's been a little bit of I don't know, I guess disagreement within the pod as far as, which side we like here. But Corey from Denver is pretty – I think one of his first bets this week was Auburn -3. That game opened at Pick'em and immediately went to 3. Addison and I –
I'll give the case since I'm a little neutral here on this one. I'll give Corey – I can give the case for Auburn.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so the case for Auburn is, I think, Nick, I agreed with your comment earlier that if you – just compare the teams on a neutral field, that Auburn would be a 2-point favorite, field goal favorite, something like that.
Yeah.
So naturally you would adjust that for that's why Florida's getting some points, especially because they're at home. But Auburn maybe is the best team. Defensive line could create some more havoc for Florida. And, they're at risk of that on the opposite side. Offensive line hasn't been great, but Bonix has shown that he can play in some big games, and maybe a road game won't phase it.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why – I get why there are Auburn backers out there. I think through some of the info I have, there might be some kind of larger betting syndicate or a huge – better that is on Auburn that pushed that from Pick'em to 3. I think when we talked about this within the group that Florida is 3rd in the country in havoc rate. Auburn is 88th on offense in havoc rate allowed. Bo Nix 24% completion percentage under pressure this year. So they've really struggled by giving up a lot of negative plays, putting themselves in a lot of bad spots. And they've been all right besides that, though. They're 42nd in adjusted line yards, 53rd in success rate. So the offense hasn't been great. It's done enough, and they looked obviously a lot better last week against an overmatched, Mississippi State team. But I think Florida's going to really give Auburn's offense and their offensive line a real wake-up call. I think there could be some short fields. I think Bo Nix is going to be in a lot of predictable situations. Now, if we flip it to the other side of the ball, and Addison, we'll go to you here and get you in on this, but Florida's offensive line has been, as far as efficiency-wise, offensive line metrics, they've been trash. Now, they've actually been all right in havoc rate allowed, but Addison, when Florida has the ball in this game, what do they need to do to find ways to manufacture drives or to get points? Is it all about them being able to hit explosives? Because I know they're capable of that. and that's why I kind of think that they've got a good shot in this game. But what are we expecting to see when Florida has the ball on offense? How do they find success?
Try to get the short passing game going, and hopefully get some explosives that way. Just get the receivers. You want to try and to counter the pass rush of Auburn. Just get the ball out of Trask's hands pretty quick. Trask has played pretty well this year. There's not really a drop off, in my opinion, between him and Franks. So, I don't have any concerns there, really. Sure, they haven't been able to run the ball really this year. That's a concern for Florida. But the thing is, I don't expect either offense to look, great in this game.
Yeah.
So as long as they don't turn it over, try to reduce negative plays, that kind of thing. When you're in scoring territory, finish drives, that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah. So Auburn currently right now is minus. They are 3-point favored, as I alluded to. Addison, I know you and I have Florida +3. Does Florida win this game on the field on Saturday?
Yeah, I think they win. I was surprised. Well, it didn't open with Florida as a dog, obviously, but
yeah,
I was
pick
surprised
'em, right.
as a dog when I looked at it. I think that so the two best defenses Bo Nix played this year, he's completing less than 50% of his passes. It's like 25-51 for just 277 yards. A few picks too. So I think it's going to be more of that kind of game for him. He had a great game last week, but I expect Florida's defense to really get after him. And potentially create some turnovers. Put Florida's offense in good situations where they can actually get some points. So, like I said, I don't see either offense having great games. I expect, close game. I'm going to give the edge to the team at home getting points.
Yeah, I have them booked at +3. I actually think Florida does win on the field. I think Auburn is a slightly better football team, but like I said, everything we just talked about, I think there's going to be some serious issues for Auburn's offensive line and for Bo Nix. I'm expecting, like you said, Addison, for Florida to have some short fields, possibly even get points on defense. I think they're going to help their offense out quite a bit in this game, and I do see them winning this game by a field goal. Dave, if you had to lean against the number, and who do you think then wins on the field on Saturday?
So I see value on the line with Florida getting points because I see that the teams are just that even. I've got Auburn and winning by 2 because they take advantage of some field position and a great play call by Gus.
Yeah.
Maybe get a big play in there. My kind of counterintuitive play on this game this week is going to be taking over, which is set at 47.
Yeah.
I just think that each team's got a chance to get some short fields and take advantage of that. And I think, to me, that could be some conditions to get the over.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid play. I feel like that's a huge reason. There's going to be a lot of havoc and a lot of opportunity for short fields for points by the defense. I think that's a solid play. But yeah, we'll move on to our last game. We've got the ABC night game again. Michigan State is at Ohio State. That line is currently, I think in most books, it's 20.5. Ohio State's obviously favored. Total around 49.5, I believe. Dave, we'll start with you this time. When Michigan State's got the ball on offense, how are they going to find success against Ohio State's defense right now?
I'm the wrong person to ask this because I have not been very high on Brian Lewerke historically in this podcast. I think he's coming off 2 decent games against Northwestern, and so he had a pretty solid game against Indiana in a bit of a shootout. But I think the only success that I see is not their strength, which could be in the run game and like busting a couple big plays, like missed assignments for Ohio State in the run game. But I don't see them as having an explosive run game.
Yeah, see, here's the thing, is that Sparty is actually 8th in havoc allowed. So, like, they've actually been pretty good preventing, like, the negative plays. But they're 84th in adjusted line yards. They're 85th on standard down, so they're not putting themselves in good spots on second down, third down. 83rd, great. Their plays are not. They're 83rd in success rate. Their plays are not grading successfully enough of the time. And OSU right now defensively 2nd in havoc rate, 7th in adjusted line yards. They're number 1 in the country as far as their ranking and success rate. So I have no idea what Sparty is going to do offensively to move the ball. Addison, do you have? I put on your coaching hat. What do you do if you're Sparty's offensive coordinator? Pray.
Well,
I mean,
what I would want to see. So Lewerke, he's definitely having a better year than last year. He's looking more like 2017 Brian Lewerke. Last year he had issues with turnovers. He wasn't completing the ball as much. He also actually he wasn't really giving them anything on the ground, which he actually did a couple years ago. I think he ran for something like 500 or 600 yards. So that was another dimension to their offense, especially since they weren't really getting much out of their offensive line and running backs. So if he can like scramble a little bit, like zone read or something, just throw a little curveball like that, if he can gain some yards, it opens their offense up a little bit. We always talk about how this is a really fucking basic offense and just, really old school, and they usually don't do things like that. But
yeah,
if they do have any like gadgets or anything, we will see them in this game. Guarantee that.
Yeah, I was thinking like misdirection, trick plays. I mean, they got to find something. But Addison, I'll stick with you. We're going to flip to when Ohio State has the ball. We kind of have a big-time strength-on-strength matchup here. Ohio State, 36th in havoc allowed, so not elite, but it's been pretty good. 3rd in adjusted line yards and on standard downs, 5th in success rate, so the offense has been very, very good. Sparty defense, 13th in havoc rate, number 1 in the country, adjusted line yards and on standard downs, so they're getting teams behind the sticks. When OSU has the ball, Addison, what do you expect from them? Do you think that Day is going to really mix it up on first down to keep Michigan State kind of on their heels?
Well, I'm definitely excited to see this offensive line versus their defensive line. I'm curious to see if they're going to be able to stop our run game. But I don't know. Yeah, probably they'll mix it up. I think we've actually done a pretty good job of that on first down for the most part this year. I think Day keeps teams off balance. And once we get the running game going a little bit, we've been pretty deadly in the play action game too. So they like to do that. They like to, if they get like a first down, they'll run play action, look for the deep ball, and I think actually the biggest edge that we have is our receivers versus their secondary.
Yeah, Dave, I'll go to you. It's a pretty good transition, actually. I feel like Sparty's defensive line is very good. They can bring pressure, I think, with just their 4. Is that a key as far as being able to drop 7 against Fields, or do you think they're going to have to bring possibly more pressure? How did they find success to give themselves a chance in this game? Is it as simple as they just need to create turnovers and havoc to give the offense short fields?
If I'm Sparty, I'm trying to be very aggressive, try to create turnovers and create negative plays. I think, that Ohio State has given up some sacks this year, and Justin Fields has not been fairly accurate on the move. So, but I think Ohio State has too many weapons. I think you got Master Teague, who brings a different dimension. Like all 6 or 7 receivers that are playing right now, they all bring something unique. So I think the best chance Sparty has is to be very, very aggressive.
Okay. So I think we all feel like OSU is definitely going to win this game. At the current number at 20.5, Dave, would you, if you're just, not an OSU fan, which way do you lean with that number?
Probably Ohio State, but I'm not betting anything on Ohio State
Yeah,
this year.
yeah,
I'm done with
obviously.
that.
Addison, lean on the number?
I would lean OSU, although I'm definitely not taking it either. Too many points here, I think, especially in this series. It's a weird series. Last year, the game ended up a lot more lopsided on the scoreboard than it really was. Like, we ended up winning 26-6. Really, it was a punt fest for most of the game, and then we got we got a safety that D'Antonio just gave us a safety. It was that much of a field position game. And then we got some turnovers, and then it was pretty much game over because Sparty couldn't move the ball at all. But, yeah, they're going to be looking to play that kind of game again and then just collapse at the end.
Yeah, I would say, if I had to bet it, I probably would buy that half point and go Sparty. I have that much respect for their defense, and I think that OSU's offense has been very good. I don't know if it's an offense you can stop. They might be able to contain them a little bit. I wouldn't be shocked to see something like 28-7 and have our defense finally be slowed down just a little bit. But I would never touch this game because it terrifies me that Sparty could maybe score 0 points. And Ohio State has just been an absolute juggernaut. So I would not I would never touch this line, but I think I actually would lean Sparty and just buy that hook and get to 21. But let's go ahead and move on to the last segment. Last but not least, we're going to get into our Week 6 bets. So, Addison, I'll start with you. If you just want to give out, obviously some of your bets, or I don't know, you don't have so many to where it's not too many, but maybe if we haven't covered, like I see you got Florida +3. We don't need to cover that, but a couple of your other ones, maybe give, obviously, your reasons why you decided to book them.
Okay. Tulane Army under 45. That's just a system play. Army, when they're an underdog, is like 66% or something. It's some insane number to go under. Just because when they're in that kind of spot, when they're a favorite, they tend to go over, and then when they're an underdog, they tend to go under.
Okay.
That's just how they've been, and it makes sense. Like, they like to play keep away from teams, especially teams that are considered like better than them. So I have the under on that one. I got Illinois +14 against Minnesota. Minnesota is not the kind of team that typically wins by more than like a touchdown. It's just like a style type thing, and I think Illinois can put up some points. So I got Illinois there. You mentioned Florida. I got Northwestern Nebraska under 50. Right now, Northwestern is going to be a team that I take a lot of unders with, just because they, their defense is kind of bend don't break, but they've been doing a pretty good job of it. Like, they give up some yards, but they do a good job of keeping teams out of the end zone, and their offense is trash, so they're not going to put up many points no matter who they're playing. And then Cal +15.5. Right now, you can get a better number than this, so go for that. But Cal, last week, I didn't like him as much. They were up there with the number 15 ranking, undefeated. I was selling Cal, and now they're back down to where I like Cal as a 2-touchdown underdog.
Right.
I think that Cal plays good enough defense, and we've seen a lot in the last year and a half where they play good defense and they can stay in these games. And a few weeks ago they were at Washington, similar spot, couple touchdown underdog, and they were able to come away with the straight up win. They are without Chase Garbers for this game, but I think they'll be all right regardless. Their backup does have experience playing at UCLA from a few years ago, So I think they'll be all right. Like, it's not like quarterback play has really put them over the top the last couple of years. So.
Okay, yeah. Dave, I'll go to you. Just give maybe a few of your best ones and why, obviously.
Sure. So my best bet of the week is going to be Washington -14 at Stanford. I think it's gone up to 15 and a half now. Look, I have really liked Washington's offensive metrics this year. More explosiveness with Jacob Eason at quarterback, and have gotten some big plays in the running game as well. Stanford's defense has just lacked their typical physical identity, where they can be very, very tough to play against. And then on the other side, Washington's defense hasn't been as great, but Stanford offense has been pretty horrible. So I like Jacob Eason in Washington to win big in Stanford, where, as we've said many a time, there really is no home field advantage there. And then the overplay that I like is Missouri and Troy over 65 and a half. But Troy's defense has been terrible. So Missouri could potentially hang up 66 just by themselves.
Okay, yeah. I guess I'll give two here. So my best bet for the week is going to be Pitt at Duke. I really think 3.5 or better is fine. I got them with half of what I bet, 5 units at 6, then 5 at 5, just because I felt that good about it. Kenny Pickett is, I think coming into the week, it was very questionable whether he was going to play or not. There were reports that he was practicing in pads today. There's a lot of sharp money on Pitt that leads me to believe, with all signs pointing to him playing in this game. And if that is the case, I think Pitt and Duke are pretty evenly matched. I think Pitt actually goes to Duke and wins this game on the field, so I feel very confident in them being a live dog. The other bet that I guess I'll give is another live dog. I really like the Beavers again this week. They are getting, I believe they're getting 5.5 at this point at UCLA. I got them at 7. UCLA, DTR is questionable to play. Even if he does, I've noted on this pod many times that besides the Washington State game, he's been absolute dog shit. But I think that the Beavs will be able to definitely score enough in this game to keep it within the number and possibly even win in the Rose Bowl. So I like both of those live dogs. Steele's only bet currently on the dock is Notre Dame -44.5 versus Bowling Green. He is going to the game. Bowling Green is atrocious. I wouldn't be shocked to see Notre Dame, in fact, cover that number in a big way. Corey's got quite a few on here. His best bet for the week is the U, -12. He doubled down at -13. Home against Virginia Tech. Miami is off a bye. Corey is betting against his alma mater. Virginia Tech's going to struggle mightily with Miami's havoc rate. I actually do have a unit on Miami as well in this game. But I think you're going to see a lot of turnovers. Virginia Tech doesn't even know who their starting quarterback for the week is. I think Fuente's going back and forth on that. But he feels very strongly about Miami. I wanted to mention he also has Illinois. Actually, 4 of us. Steele's the only one that doesn't have Illinois. So I think we all feel very confidently in Illinois as a double-digit dog there.
Yeah, basically a consensus pick there.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of that is Illinois actually ranks very high in havoc rate created. Minnesota is very, very low in havoc rate allowed. I think there's going to be a lot of negative plays, potentially some short field, some defensive scores from Illinois. And I think Illinois is going to be able to definitely run the ball on Minnesota. And I think they got a shot in this game, guys, to be honest. I think they're a live double-digit dog. If I had to pick one, I would.
They win by like 30 against them last year. So not that matters, but I thought they blew Minnesota out last year.
They destroyed Minnesota. They were a 9-point dog. They won 55-31.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. You could argue on the other side of that Minnesota has some kind of like revenge factor, but I just feel like Illinois is not the best matchup for them. And Minnesota's coming off of like what felt like a blowout win to them at Purdue. They're riding pretty high. I think Illinois is definitely a good play here. So, Dave, if you want to give your final thought for this week's pod.
I'm good.
Oh, okay.
Good pod. Good pod, yeah.
Sweet. Okay. Addison, any final thoughts for this week?
I think OSU is the best team in the country right now.
Yeah, I do too. Is there? I guess like, who's a team that you're curious to see a little bit more from that you feel like might want to start creeping up into that top 4, Addison? Like, do you think maybe Wisconsin's a team like that?
I'm trying to think who they're playing coming up. I think they've got some big games.
They've got.
Well, they've got us in October.
They've got Kent State
You know what? I'm gonna say Penn State.
Okay.
Because I remember they had an interesting schedule for the month of October. I'm trying to pull it up. Yeah, they play at Iowa, host Michigan, and
at Sparty, who's off the bye.
And then they're at Michigan State. So this is a huge month for Penn State, and they're a team that could be coming on right now. So let's see how they look in that 3-game stretch.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I think we covered everything we wanted to cover. Obviously, if you guys, if you've watched the pod before, you know that the bets will be down in the description box. But if you haven't watched, all of our up-to-date records are going to be down in that description box with our Week 6 bets as well. And if you guys have any questions or comments, throw them in the comment section. If you have any, anything like ideas as far as what you want to see us talk about in the future, we'll take that into consideration. But otherwise, hopefully it's going to be another good slate of games on this Saturday, and we'll see you next week for the Week 7 pod.